Hey everyone, Madcarver here with Bearwood Supply. Hope you're all doing well today. This is my shop, as you know, and today we don't need that anymore. Today we're going to be working on, come with me, basic lamppost. And so, you know, vintage, just basically a stick holding another stick, holding a rope with a lantern on it. So, in all cases where I work with these, let me just roll these up. I take a pattern and I transfer it to the block. And the way I transfer it to the block is by using a metal stylus. And I just trace the entire, the entire pattern along its lines. And then after when I'm done with that, I just go back over it, and the metal stylus leaves a nice indent in the wood, and then I can just go back with a pencil and draw in all of those little grooves, and that's what you get here. Additionally, what I do is I then go on the outside of the entire subject matter, and I use a cut-saw bit, or I use another cutting bit to just go around the entire outside of your subject. And it can go however deep you'd like. I usually go down 3/4 of the depth of the actual project. And what that does for us is it allows us to create room around the project that we can just cut away. And normally what I do is I'll draw this on and then cut this with you guys, or I'll cut it before and then remove the wood. And today I decided to just cut it so I could show you what it looks like at this stage, and then from there I can just go ahead and remove it, and I'll show you what that looks like now. So basically what I have here is, make sure my sound is all the way up. What that will look like is basically you put it against something that's strong and holds on your bench here, and then you can just lean it up against there and get your mallet and any tool really, whitish gouge, and then from there you put it on the back side and just hit it with your mallet. Too much. If you take too much, it'll cut through the wrong side, so got to be careful with that. So let me take a little less off. Go with a smaller cut here. This wood is not exactly, it's got some warpage to it. Let's try this side. We're still okay on depth there, but that did not come off nicely. That's better. That's easier. We'll just clean up a bit here. This chips all get in the way. All right. And one more pass over here real quick. Wow, that is just warped on that side. All right, for the most part, it's now pretty much removed. We can get a smaller chisel in here and just remove this section here and clean it up. So you can see that it's fairly easy to remove once you've made the cut around the entire circumference of your project. So I should just I'll let you know in case you're beginning and you want to get chisels and other things. So to make that cut, I used a cut saw bit, kind of like this one, and this one is a extra coarse one, but Bearwood Supply sells a lot of these bits that can fit in your typical 1/8 inch diameter rotary tool. So they just pop in, pop out. They're super simple and super quick to remove. Out and in, you're ready to go again. I love that about this tool. The actual tool is a Marathon micromotor, and the cut saw bits and the chisels. The chisels are Schaaf quality, good tools, full size, and Bearwood Supply carries them in addition to many other carving tools. So that's where you can get all your stuff. So let's look at the project. What we have here is a couple stones down here, and they're really just there so that we can have some, things to cover the bottom of the pole itself. And we're actually looking at this with a 45 degree going this way, in addition to one going this way. So we're getting a line here, and they're going off in two different directions. The top of the pole is mostly not exactly the top of the pole, rather you're just seeing the side as it is chamfered upward. We have this post coming out, and it's got some sort of holding mechanism here, which we'll carve in addition to this post here. Then we got some rope, and we have a lantern. So let's get to it. Basically, let's start with a skew chisel. If you know me at all, you know that I use the skew chisel pretty much all the time. So you use it a lot initially for setting your stop cuts. So to start this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some stop cuts. We know that this post here, let me push you down a little lower so you can see better. So we know that this post right here sticks out from this portion of the wood. So we have kind of a line here going up to here, and it goes that way, right? And same here, it's just a side view of that. And then we have this post sticking out from there. So what we're going to want to do is cut a stop cut into that section there, and then on the bottom as well. And then from there we can actually we'll cut this one down here as well, and then we can take a smaller gouge. Typically I like using the number 5 8mm, and what we can do is go ahead and put that on right now. It doesn't have to be the entire thing, pardon me, it doesn't have to be the entire or the finished angle, but we do want to put on a basic angle so that we can see it in our mind's eye where we want to go. You've seen me make these forward cuts before, but I also use cuts in this manner. They are both super safe, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before, but safety is key for yourself and those around you. So this method is what I've basically nicknamed the dominant non-dominant hand method, which is basically to have complete control over the tool at all times. And so the dominant hand, my right hand, is for thrust and power, and my non-dominant hand, my left hand, is for guidance and steering of the tool while I'm using it. Try not to bounce the camera as best I can. Sorry about that. That is bouncing all over the place. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can do it this way. It's not exactly the safest method, but don't want you bouncing. All right, let's look at that. So now we have one side of our pole up, and what we're going to do is the same thing on the opposite side. So now we're going to cut over here to separate it from its base, and we're just going to cut all down that whole section. So we're going to get our stop cut in there. We'll use our skew chisel here again just to put in a cut, and that's plenty, and we'll cut here. Again, it's up to you as to what you find comfortable, and what you're used to. I don't know why the camera's moving so much. Let me see if I can't push that down a bit. Give it a little more stability. Or you can also just keep with the forward motion that you use as well. And regardless of which way I'm using the tool, I'm still holding the right hand, in this case the dominant hand, with my power and thrust, and the left is for guidance and steering, and the same goes for this pushing method as well. You can see that when I cut the wood, I'm using this hand to hold the wood down, and I'm using the other hand pretty freely to do the cutting. Either way, I'm safe. Alright, so now we got some 3D going. We are going to want to push this further down at some point, otherwise we won't be able to create the rocks. The rocks, as you can see, or stones rather, the stones do sit in front of the pole, and they show quite a bit of the surface of the top, a little bit here too, but you can see based on that artwork alone that these stones stick out further than the post itself. But if we just start cutting the post down, we're going to have to cut all this down too. So let's take it one step at a time. So we have this one here just angled enough for us to see what we want to do. And this one here is going to stick out, as you can see, in a sideward direction. So that means that we're going to have to cut this post in that same direction. So let's try to do that. We know that it sticks out onto the side, so to do that, we're going to want to cut in this area here, and that will bring this entire surface down. But as soon as we do that, we're going to definitely have to drop this pole down. So let's look at how that's going to turn out. So first of all, I'm just going to put in a slight stop cut right here at an angle. just enough to give us a place to cut and stop. So we'll start with slight cuts here. At an angle. And now we need to put a stop cut in at the rope section to separate the rope. Separate the rope from that part of the post. So we'll get our ski chisel again. And we'll just put in a stop cut there. And we can actually do it in a couple other places too, but it may not be as important at the moment. You can go around the rope that you can see. Now, by separating the rope in its entirety around this post here, what you can do now is try to cut. And we should make note that this section here is the end of the post. So we don't want to cut that. But we can use a cut here. That we want to join up with here. So this can be cut away. Just to give you an idea. Now all of these are off, so we have to bring them into play. But you can see that this is the end, and this is the side. And now we have to make the side match up with our post. So let's do that. It's really just a matter of getting this part here correct. And you might end up seeing it completely off. So let me explain that. As we cut an angle on this post here, we have to line this up with the same plane. But then because this has to be cut down much further, because the actual height of this needs to drop way down, it's not going to match up until you start playing with all of these levels. So initially we made this level just so you could see that it has to go in that direction. This level here, same, in the opposite direction. And then we cut in this post here to show that it needed to be separated from this plane right here. But then we had to set a diagonal plane against it. It's technically this is perpendicular to this surface, but it's really difficult to tell here. So we kind of just have to go little by little and get it in. We know that we've cut the rope out here. So in order to get the rope to stick out, we know that it has to be, this post here has to be lower than the rope. So we can go ahead and put a little bit of depth in there. To get what we know at least has to be slightly present. Alright, so now we take this depth and we go into the block. Remember that you have this plane here that you have to maintain, so we'll just drop it further. So we need more room to work. You might have to go quite a bit. It's okay. We have room. Give me a second, I'm going to sharpen this tool. this. You guys might want to see that. So this is how I sharpen tools. Alright, back to the work here. Here we are. Just wipe this thing off real quick. Alright. So we're just going to keep going down a bit. Wow, that's so much better. We can still take off more on the inside of here, on the outside as well. Still have quite a bit of room. So if you find yourself needing more room, you can cut in here at will. This block is 3/4 of an inch thick basswood, so I have a lot of room to work. You just need to take it step at a time. So now I know that I have this depth right here, and it represents the height of the rope on this plane. So I'll need to at least start here and push it inward at an angle. And that may require that this entire plane and this entire object, the post itself, may have to drop quite a bit. And it's in fact going to need to drop quite a bit. But I wanted to start it like that so you could see it from the get-go. I understand that there are a lot of people dislike removing their artwork, and I get that. But sometimes it's required, and so gotta roll with the punches best you can. You can always go right back to the pattern that you started with and redraw it. So we're just going to do this again here. We're just going to slowly take it off and creep up on this angle. Now, it's pretty flat right now, and we know that it has to go at an angle, but you can creep up on it. Whoa, that's sharper. Okay, so we're just going to take it on down a bit here. So that's a better angle right there. So we will have to straighten and clean it all the way up to this edge here. And we'll do that. And you'll see how much further the post needs to drop to get that angle to be clearly defined. See how we're straightening this and where it lands on this surface. Just bigger skew. Okay, so because the pole, because the angle of this, I guess we'll call it an arm, the outer arm here is mostly correct. We can get this correct and we can bring it into the same plane here, but the basic depth of that arm is going to be about here, which means that we'll need to drop this. So what I'm going to do, just to make it easier to redraw, I'm going to note that this is the line that, it's not really center, but we can tell that this is where the center point is that faces the highest point towards our eyes. So we know that this is about there. And over here, it's there. So I'll put a line in right there. So that when I start cutting this whole area down, I'll have those two lines over here and over here to redraw that entire center line. So let's take that down a bit. Don't go crazy at first. Just take a bit off and go, yeah, I'm going to need to take more than that. But get a good gauge of the depth by taking a little bit off at a time. You can go sideways. If your tool is sharp, you can go against the grain just fine as well. My grain is going horizontal today. So when I cut in this direction, I'm cutting against the grain. If your tool is sharp, it shouldn't be a problem. If it isn't sharp and you're having problems sharpening it, you can always just cut sideways just like this. And it should just come right off when you're cutting with the grain. So now, just get a better understanding of this. We know that that line is not correct, so we're going to cut it down. Don't worry too much about the rope. As long as it's in place, you have it here still, it's not going to be a problem getting it to cut right in and create. So we're just going to try to get this clean. Looking at the side, that's not bad actually. A little bit of depth here will help us. Good. And we're going to roll it in here. Just going to cut little bits off here just to try to get it to match. Cut some in here. And here. Try to line it up. So I'm looking down the center of the block to see if I can see this edge here, this edge right here, and this edge right here to see if I can bring them into the same exact height and plane. And to me it looks like it's off about, I don't know, tiny bit. Cut some right here, trying to match that plane. Sometimes the smaller skews are what's required. And I know everybody has their favorite tools. So, you know, if you got a favorite tool that you're using that works just fine, go for it. Just because I use skews all the time doesn't mean you guys have to. So, it's not exactly correct because it appears to be too high here. And this is kind of a detail point, but it bothers me. And I've found that if it bothers you, it kind of needs to be worked on right now. Because it'll just keep bothering you. Okay, so now let's bring up our line again just for, just to get it in our head a little better. And I'm going to need a ruler. Give me a second. All right. Now you can see here that this middle section here has kind of two lines here. They almost parallel each other, but it is a beam, and this was rough hewn back in the days. They didn't have any saws or anything like that. So they just kind of did it all by hand. So these lines may not be perfectly perpendicular, perfectly parallel to each other, and that's fine. The idea right now is to rough it out. So what we need to do, and you could just do it by hand too, you don't even need a ruler. Basically, you just need to roughly get what you need on the line from the artwork. So you just kind of do one of these, and that kind of represents almost those two lines there in the center, and also helps you here. Now, we've only dropped a little bit here, so do we need to drop more? Probably. But at present, it's enough for us to see what we're trying to create. So what you can do now is go back and take out this section here that is flat, pardon me, flat to the bench. And you can take out this section here as well, seeing that that also got flattened. So you just go back and do it again. When I work in this direction, it's very comfortable for me, but I think the bench bounces more. So I'm just going to do it sideways like this so it doesn't bounce as much. And it does still bounce. Sorry. I'm going to fix that by the next time we have a video lesson. Because if it bothers me, it's probably bothering you. Alright, try to get it clean as we can here. This may not be an exact 45 degrees, but again, that's a detail point that you guys can work on, we can all work on if you like, toward the end. So we're just now bringing this, and remember, as you're cutting here, you're going to be cutting to this line here where we brought it, and this line here, which is basically the top, and then the bottom, right? So all this cut here. And when I'm trying to show you guys, I can't always hold the chisel, otherwise you can't see. So in an effort to be as safe as possible, I will hold my own wrist and not allow that tool to get away from me. Let's have a look at that. Lots of chips today. All right, so now we have, let me try to lift it a bit so you can see it. So now we have the pole pushed back a bit. Not exactly, I think, what we want. It's really only got like maybe 1/8 of an inch in depth here, as you can probably see. And if we clean it, I can show you that. It's really very small depth movement there. So you can drop that further later. And as you know now, based on what we just did, you can keep dropping that if you want, and just keep cutting this 45 degree or more or less 45 degrees on both sides to clean it up. So there's not that much there. But as you do that, you'll have to continually cut this and this and this. So you can see here that this arm portion needs to be pretty flat and appear to be perpendicular to the sign itself, but we're on an angle, so it's kind of tough to tell. So you just try to line up this portion here, which you can see, and this portion here, which you can see, and make that work. Now, we can also tell here that we've literally gone off the entire side of this pole. So that's not enough. So what we're going to do is cut this section out here to get some more depth on this pole and up here as well. And then we'll deepen this track so we can push the pole way down. Now the reason I've gone through all of this, kind of so that you know that I'm going to be just repeating a whole bunch of work. But if I just cut it all down and it was perfect to my first set of cuts, you guys wouldn't be able to follow along as easily as me repeating it. And if you guys tell me not to repeat work, then I'll just stop doing that. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep doing it the same way. Now I'm just creating more depth for me to work with. You can probably see that I can take off a whole bunch of material here without having to take off more depth. But if I do that, then I'll just run into the need later. So we're going to cut it off right now. Plus it needed to be cleaned anyway. So you can use your fluter in here. I should probably do it so you can see. You can use your fluter in here to remove the debris, right? And create depth as well. But I don't use these fluters or V-tools very often because, to tell the truth, they're just so difficult to sharpen that, I mean, I can do it, but I like do it once a year. When it gets dull, I just stop using it and go back to the skew chisel. And people are like, well, they do have their place in wood carving, that's true, but almost everywhere you would use a V parting tool, you can use the skew instead, so I often do that. And I'm just blowing to get rid of the chips where I can. Alright, so now you can see I've got some more depth here to work with. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this whole side further down. And I'm going to try to get it so that this arm appears to be in the side of here. Okay, let's try that. Start with the skew chisel. So I should be clear here. When you're starting with the skew chisel, you're going to put very light cuts here at the top, and they're going to get deeper as you get to the bottom. So just a light cut here with more depth at the bottom here. Again here, a light cut here with a heavier and deeper cut there. May be able to see light, heavy, light, heavy. And that will allow me to cut off material easier toward that end. Okay, so you can see here that I've created quite a bit of depth here. There's like almost 1/8 of an inch in here. I think that's like, I don't know what that is in millimeters, 3 or so. Anyway, so you have this depth here, and you can't just cut it. You want it to follow this flat plane. So you have this flat plane here, right? And you hope that it's duplicated here, and if it's not, we can totally bring that in at some point. But it's mostly, this is headed in this direction, this is headed in this direction. They're both flat. You can bring them into play later, maybe when you create the rope. But if it's flat here, then it needs to go flat all the way into here, which is meeting up with the post. So as we do that, you can either cut here straight in, following the flat plane here, or you can slowly bring this in here, just trying to be careful with not cutting too deep. I tend to try to follow the plane that's currently there, and if you do that, then you know you're pretty straight, and then you can come over and remove when you can't cut anymore, and then go back to the plane again and press again, and then again continuing to do that. And if you just hack off a bunch of material, you might end up cutting off something you need, so just keep that in mind. So right here, we're slightly lower on this side than we are on this side. So we'll want to bring that to line up. Again, that's kind of a detail thing, and you can leave it toward the end if you wish. So now they're about the same. Now you can just bring the rest of that in. So it's a little bit closer based on, if you see, you can see that the depth is here and that the post is much more towards the middle than it was before. Before it was like completely off. So now you've brought it much closer. So the deeper you go here, the more of this side will be present where the arm would be attached. So it's really low here, so I should bring this a little lower here. Eventually this whole section obviously needs to go as well, but we line this at, depths up here with the same depths up here, and then it fits. So now what we need to do is drop it again. So now you have a better understanding of what you need for depth on the main pole. And could you go there right from the get-go? Absolutely. Most people do, or some people do at least. And when you do that, it's easy to make a mistake and cut too much, and then you got to start over again. So you can do that, or you can go little by little. I prefer little by little. It's totally up to you. Now I'm going to go and cut this down again. now we brought the entire thing down. You can see that the ultimate height of the post itself is going to be lower than where this arm has pushed the lantern, which is good, and we have done that. We might need to go a little lower, but again, it's much easier to gauge that after you have looked over the entire thing. So we'll just draw a line up to here, and that is our top point. So your cuts again would be from here, that line, to where we've created our depth, which is here. This is our depth, this is our depth. Over here it's not correct, but this is correct here. So we can just bring all of this area down to this depth here. And when you're cutting in your side, you just take that down to its current depth on a flat plane. So to cut it down quickly, over here, since we left some of this out before, I'll just make a stop cut there, and then I find that this is a very quick way to remove material. Unfortunately, it's going to bounce a bit. You just get this off quickly. You can exert a lot of power into your two hands right here using this method and be totally safe. That's the key, being safe and still providing enough power to take off a lot of material. Alright, so now we have some really good depth here. We're going to need to cut the same depth that we have right here, all along here, over here as well. But that's a time waster for you guys, so we'll just look at that and recognize it needs to be done over here. And you'll want to take the side section here off. So looking at our artwork, oops, upside down. So looking at our artwork, we know that this gets cut at an angle, and then this one is just the same except opposite. So there's a little less material, I think maybe here. So this side will not be as thick as this side here. And what I mean by that is the distance between here and here. So this is slightly thicker than this side is. So you can just keep that in mind. And you can also just change it if you want. If this is, you know, a customer piece or something, you got to follow the artwork perfectly. But if you're just having fun, change it if you want to. All right. You're not going to get the full ultimate depth that you would normally get at the very end, because there's a detail phase where you just really go clean up everything. But you can do your best to get mostly there. Alright, now let's go ahead and clean this one. still prefer the method of this. You can do it by keeping the current flat plane that you have flat. By just creating a small stop cut along that edge. So again, it's not perfect, but that's what detail is for. Just try to get it in. It's actually not bad. It does drop a bit here. Okay, so this plane here now is mostly correct with this one, but you can still add detail to that later. You still need to remove this one just to get a basic understanding. And I think you get that, so you guys can work this section out. Let's get to the other part of the rope. We have the rope here, but we also have the rope here. And there's two sets of rope here. So we're just going to make a stop cut on the bottom side of that. We also know that the rope is holding a lantern, which is, a geometric shape. So being held up by gravity, it would be in the center of whatever that shape is. In this particular case, it's kind of rounded, but it's more square shaped. So we know that regardless of whether it's round or square, that rope will be sitting in the center of this object. So we know that the rope here is on top, or rather higher than the rope under it. So we know that we can cut this one. And we also know that it is in the center of that object. So we know that this rope has to be cut down to at least a small amount. Okay, so that sticks out there. We also know that this rope is going to travel here. It's going to get rounded, but sit on this plane. We know that it's also rounded here and here, but it sits on this plane. So we'll have to have this side portion stay here, and this portion on top and bottom will follow the front of that arm. So we're going to, again, like we did here, we're going to have a light cut here and a heavier cut over here. So light here, heavier here. And that creates a area where we can cut just like we did here. It will also be the same here, allowing us to cut that down to match the surface that it's following. Now that we've cut this a bit, we'll have to go in with a small chisel, pardon me, a small skew, and do the same thing we did here, light here, heavy here, on the inside. So light here, heavy here. Be careful, this is pretty weak here, so you got to be careful with what you're doing. And then once you've got this cut and this cut in, we can try to mold this into shape. Top portion gets the same. Based on our artwork, we show that this flat plane here and this flat plane here are the same. We have it here and here the same. And the distance between its end and to the rope can vary. It depends on, you try to follow the artwork to the best of your ability, but it's approximately correct, I think, based on that much. So we'll try to just leave that. But as soon as we cut this one free, we have to then apply our cut again. And here too, but we didn't cut here yet. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we apply the cut. And then the rope, top, bottom, side, it doesn't sit right on the end. So we'll make this as clean as we can right here. I mean, not as much as we can, because when we do detail, we'll add a lot of nice clean edges, but you make it mostly clean. And then we get this rope to round in and fall slightly behind it. That's why we need these stop cuts in here. And all of our angles don't have to match up perfectly right now. We just need to try to get in place our idea of this so that we can kind of just get its place. So we're like, okay, the rope's here, the rope's here, the rope's here. The side, or rather the front of the arm is here, the side of the arm is here, this is the rope under. So you get a place for everything. And then you go back and you get it right. That's what the roughing stage gives us. I'm like, okay, well, it's in more or less in the right place now, but obviously this arm is not straight anymore. It's tilted in different ways. The depth of the rope is not hardly enough, and so on. That's all true. And you can go back and create more depth here and here to get that rope to be larger, which is totally normal, like that. So now it's much larger, but then you have to rework everything else. So that's totally normal. But getting it in place, getting it where it needs to be, is really the key point. So you can always go back and say, okay, yeah, I need this to be straight, and there's this little cuff here that I got to deal with, and then something like this. I'm drawing sideways, so I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but for the most part, it looks okay. Get this thing here like that, and then you got your sides up here, and so you can straighten and clean as you go. But really, the main point is to get them in the places that they need to be, and then you can clean up later. So let's look at that. So this one here, wasn't really sure when I created the artwork whether I intended this thing to be round or to be square, but I think I got it to be more or less round. So these areas here show that it's rounded on the bottom edge here. It's kind of round here. So we're just going to round it. So you can go ahead and there's a couple schools of thought here. A lot of people like to put in all these lines right now, get them in there fairly deep. And when they do that, when they carve off all of the artwork, some of those cut lines will still be present. And if they are, pardon me, and if they are still present, they kind of serve as the lines that your artwork traveled. So they can reline with the pencil and so on. Well, it's fine, but I think I'll just put in light ones. I won't put in a lot of depth at the moment. So you got that one, and that one, and then that one pretty much. And then this one here, I envisioned it being pointed toward the top. So these will have this kind of look to it. Right? And then this one as well, like that. But it will also be pointed, so it'll have this top portion removed and cone shaped. And you can do that at present, but kind of like how we started this one, it's all going to go away when you start cutting it into a round, right? And the depth will drop a bit too. Probably on all edges, because we know that our rope right here in the center has to be in the center of this object. So everything seems to change over and over again. But mainly what you can go with any artwork and any project you're on is you get it to a pattern onto the block, you cut around it so you have a place to work, you remove what you don't need, and then as you start cutting into your project, you try to just place all of your subject matter in the place that it's supposed to be. So you cut an area here and you go, okay, well, that makes sense, but that arm's not correct. So you get the arm where you think it needs to be on the block in more or less the depth that it needs to be. And then you work the things that were affected by that cutting of the arm. And then you just keep going from A to B to C to D all the way down the line. Sometimes you need to go back to A and recut more depth to get yourself more room, and so on and so forth. At some point, you finish it and you're good to go. All right, so we've done my hour. My hour is up for today. And I will continue this work on Sunday on my Instagram channel at Madcarver Woodcarvings. And we'll see you then. If there are any questions, I'll hold out for a couple minutes. Oh, you guys have been asking questions. Let me read this. Australia. Cool. Nice to meet you, Ken, Tina. Very informative. Sweet. Everyone is totally welcome. Cold Iowa. Yeah, it's a little chilly today. I think it's like 69 degrees. I hope that doesn't make you mad. All right, everyone. So we're good to go. And I'll see you on Instagram on Sunday. It'll just be me working here and doing pretty much the same stuff, but we'll start right from this point. Okay, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Also right here on Facebook on Bearwood Supply. All tools from there. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.